Russia said this week that they've tested a new missile that can go more than 8,000 miles. Is that saber rattling for you? What is that?
They know we have a nuclear submarine, the greatest in the world, right off their shores. So, I mean, it doesn't have to go 8,000 miles. And they're not playing games with us. We're not playing games with them either. We test missiles all the time. But, you know, we do have a submarine, a nuclear submarine. We don't need to go 8,000 miles. And I don't think it's an appropriate thing for Putin to be saying either, by the way. He ought to get the war ended. A war that should have taken 1 week is now in its soon fourth year. That's what he ought to do instead of testing missiles.
Constitution and many conventions. So it's not, I think, appropriate when people say, when are you going to end the war? Where are you going to stop? Zaporozhye, are you going to give it back? Actually, we now have taken some other territories which are not, which do not belong to the regions reflected now in our constitution. The reason is very simple. We need a buffer zone because Ukrainians continue shelling, bombing, droning Russian including the territories which never were challenged by anybody. Bryansk, Belgorod, Kursk, and so root causes. That's what must be key to understanding how to help end this situation efficiently, and thinking not about grabbing back territories, not about saving political losers who are ruling in Kiev, but thinking about the people who, should be the utmost concern of those who say that they're champions of democracy.
Well, hello, that's me again. Today is October 28th, 2025. And what you see in the beginning is, I just gave, so to speak, the platform or the word to the man himself. And Mr. Lavrov is explains you in practical terms what is this all about. And before we go any further, and I have something to say, obviously, about so-called professional level, or rather lack thereof, of those experts and military specialists around, combined West. Let's talk about this thing. And if you expect me again, I know there are very many decent French people who actually really suffering from seeing what is happening to their country. But we have to, and again, I have to explain it in no uncertain terms, as was done. And who am I compared to people like Lavrov or Putin or what have you? And even Mr. Tolstoy, great grandson of Leo Tolstoy, who explained to French media person who was taking the interview with him that, you want to deploy troops to Ukraine? We will kill them. And that's exactly what is happening in this. The guy is obviously a clown, and essentially he made France, except for Airbus, as I already stated, an indigenous nuclear deterrent, small, however small it is. It's a pathetic country, honestly, and it's going and circling down the drain. And, people from SVR, they go and explain. And SVR, as you know, it's the Service of the Foreign Intelligence, or basically equivalent of the CIA, sort of. And they talk about that this pathetic dude, the teller boy from one of the branches of the bank owned by Rothschilds or whoever, and Macron dreams of military intervention in Ukraine, Moscow. And the French president has reportedly ordered a contingent of 2,000 soldiers to prepare to help Kiev, according to Russian intelligence. So, and they are correctly say what we know, essentially. It's just that very important that really one of the best, if not the best, intelligence services in the world gives that definition to this clown, to this boy, Teller boy, and they say that having failed as a politician and despaired of ever pulling the country out of the long social and economic crisis, he does not give up the hope to go down in history as a military leader. The SVR claimed, adding that Macron dreams of a military intervention in Ukraine and is known for fantasizing about Napoleon's laurels. Yeah. According to the SVR, the French general staff has reportedly already been instructed to form a contingent of up to 2,000 troops for deployment in Ukraine. The core of this force is expected to be made up of troops from the French Foreign Legion, mainly recruited from Latin American countries. Yes, and mainly recruited by this type of people which have been, well, essentially killed on the industrial quantities on the line of the combat conduct in the special military operation. And this is how French want to fight. And it is known that some hospitals in France are being prepared to, handle 2,000 people, 2,000 legionnaires. Really, these guys will actually soil their pants if they will ever encounter, which they will try to avoid by all means, any kind of the storm group by a Russian army. And, well, it has to be explained to people that which France doesn't have any kind of their, well, how to put it, it doesn't have their means to provide the proper deployment, and the only way they are trying to do this is they secretly insert them as advisors. I don't know what those losers can advise. I don't know, maybe how to run back or surrender, throw the hands up in the air. But there is nothing which French armed forces can provide or advise the whatever is left of the armed forces of Ukraine. And yeah, I'm not being facetious. I'm not being, having this Schadenfreude moment. I understand French have their own view of their own history. Not very good history in the 20th century, and ranging from the humiliation in World War II, and of course the humiliation in Indochina, in Vietnam, Dien Bien Phu, and all that. But yeah, for some reason they think that they are somehow heirs of Napoleon. No, they are not. I mean, they have those ideations and aspirations to be seen as the powerful military entity, which they are not. As I already stated, on many occasions, remove French nuclear deterrent, which of course you have to consider very strongly, and what's left is a pathetic army with the half of this equipment is not working. It's the second-rate air force and air defense, yeah, Aster 30, all kinds of those SMPTs, what have you. It's all, foolhardy attempts at pretending that you somehow matter as the armed forces. You don't, and they will be killed, and that has to be understood. And if you go today for the tally, I believe it's yesterday's tally. If you take a look at the losses of the armed forces of Ukraine, for the 27th, you can see yourself, it is 1,380 of military personnel, and most of them are killed. They are not just wounded, as I already stated, non-stop. Multiply this number, 1,380, by at least 1.8, and you will get approximately the whole number of the losses, while, yeah, the number of killed will be hovering around 1,300. And I also deliberately highlighted again the SAMs, surface-to-air missile complexes, 633 throughout from the start of the special military operation, which Russians demolished, basically all of them, all kinds of them. There are no, the only thing which Russians didn't have the chance to get their hands on is the American THAAD, and the United States will not send THAAD there, not so much because of the, it might help whatever is left of Ukraine, but because essentially it's going to be humiliated yet again. And that we will need to discuss this issue a little bit down the road in this video. And now we have obviously this situation, which of course creates look at this. This is without scale, and so people don't look at me. It's the military chronicles. They just put here a more detailed map of the Pokrovsk, which is Krasnoarmeysk, and as you can see yourself, Russians control most of it. Mirnograd is completely surrounded, and if we go and see more proper maps, basically made by military professional Colonel Popov and Marat Khairulin, there you go. Here's the situation around Pokrovsk yesterday. Well, 2 days actually before, and as you can see yourself, a complete envelopment, and as we already stated prior, that there are 5,500 in Pokrovsk alone which are left there, and who knows how many will be killed or taken prisoners there. So, well, by the time it will be done, we will know the number, as some of my acquaintance on the front line say, and they say just, by the time we're done, then we'll start counting. Nobody counts them really in that thoroughly until obviously the line, either the city is liberated or the line stabilizes, then Russians go and count the bodies, whichever they can, well, basically recover. And so we have also to take a look at Kupiansk. Here is Kupiansk. Also 2 days ago, it's again courtesy of Mikhail Popov and Marat Khairulin, and yeah, it's also surrounded. There is no way out, and yeah, we're looking probably at, I don't know, so. But by different estimates, well, Mr. Gerasimov, the chief of the general staff of Russian armed forces, he said, he talked about 11,000 altogether in these two locations. Obviously, there are other locations where the well, the demilitarization and denazification is happening there, and this is just the part of it. So, and when you look at the attempts of France to do something about it, somebody has to explain to them, even if they would have close air support, for example, which I don't think French have it, and unless they want to risk all those Rafales, which will be shut down basically immediately, yeah, they are basically kamikazes. That is why they use those, the cheap lives of those Jews from Latin America. They will throw them into the meat grinder. And again, you have to understand, those people, there is not a single officer in the French armed forces who have any grasp of what is going on there. Oh, well, those who do, actually, they're not allowed anywhere near in the, as is the case with the United States, anywhere near the levels of the influence and power and in the decision-making circuit. So whatever French, as I already stated, can advise there, they for some reason believe that they are capable of going to Russia, while in reality they are midgets militarily and now economically, especially when one considers the fact of the economic situation in France. And yeah, they don't have any resources to ramp up military production, and even if they did, it's not even serious, So, and then apart from this whole ordeal with French, which it seems to, they always, try to get involved into some kind of their, I don't know, mayhem. And then, of course, they get their butt kicked, and then they suffer for, pretend that they had been, very courageous and capable of doing something about it, while in reality they have been not. But I won't be, well, it would have been very improper of me to ignore the important part now. Let's get back to Burevestnik. As you might expect, and although Mr. Lavrov correctly states that there is pretty much silence, of course, apart from Mr. Trump, who again produced a wowzer of the statesmanship on the board of the Air Force One, when explaining that the appearance of Burevestnik and being deployed at the first line of service. But we know who Mr. Trump is. We know what he has no clue about anything military related, and I don't think he has the toolkit to even grasp it. But here is the issue. Wall Street Journal Well, Mr. Lavrov states that there is a silence there. Well, yeah, for the most part, but obviously not in the Wall Street Journal. This is a neocon, neoliberal central. These are the bunch of morons there. I mean, there are no normal people who work for Wall Street Journal. There are all kinds of the delusional hacks, which is the case for the most of the political elites and intellectual elites in the West. And but they reacted. So there we go. Okay, so, good lord. Putin uses missile technology to send a new message to the West, Wall Street Journal says. It is written by Thomas Grove and Daniel Michaels. Russian President Vladimir Putin has hailed the first long-distance test of the nuclear-powered cruise missile that the Kremlin leader said has no equals in the West. Well, in terms of the missilery in general, there is nothing equals to what Russian missile arsenal, ranging from all kinds of, land attack missiles to hypersonic weapons, is simply not there, period. I mean, and that's the thing. They need to cope. They need to really, well, there are all kinds of their anal cooling means, evidently, for people with the hemorrhoids. They should use that in Wall Street Journal and any other media outlets in the West, because they're a bunch of cretins. So what do they report? The claim sent a warning to the West about the risk of escalation in Ukraine and could yield a bargaining chip. Well, I mean, it's not even the bargaining chip. And yeah, you cannot explain to these people. You just can't. I'm not kidding you that what is going on, because they have no toolkit. But so they talk about the range, and as always, if the Burevestnik performs as Putin and his top generals boasted, now they don't boast, they just give you information and it's always correct. It could deliver nuclear warhead to the far side of the planet using a unique propulsion system. So I'm not sorry. Is it an old missile tech, or is it unique propulsion system? How about we start to give the proper definitions, not this confusing BS whose only thing is to spin it somehow as to prevent butt hurt among all those so-called experts. And we'll talk about these experts. And so it is unique propulsion system, and nobody has it, and not even close. It could stay aloft almost indefinitely, hugging the ground, or sea, swerving to evade missile defense systems. But the weapon would be anachronistic in many ways, experts say. I have news for Wall Street Journal, to CNN, to New York Times. United States doesn't have experts in air defense. And all those opinions expressed by all those generals, who themselves are hacks for the most part, and I explained many times why the American general of any variety is now a meme in Russia, because those people exhibit the ignorance of the incredible level. And well, I talked to Brandon Weikart of the National Interest, and you can go and take a look at our interview. We did a very extensive podcast in a couple of parts. And Brandon, who himself was a staffer in a congressional staffer, and he was a liaison with the Pentagon, and he took part in many war games. He correctly stated to me, I mean, which we knew all along, American generals believe that their intelligence is valid because it is intelligence from Kiev. So you basically already know that all those experts, be them with the PhDs and from MIT or what have you, these are ignoramuses. They do not understand what are the data sets. They do not understand what performance of the air defense systems is, and how Burevestnik affects it. So the Burevestnik, which flew at well below the speed of sound, well, actually it's not well below. It is transonic. That means what? It's nearing supersonic speed, and it can go generally supersonic, Mach 1.2, 1.4. We still do not know precise numbers, but it's capable of supersonic flight. And so made its debut just as subsonic missiles are increasingly being shot down in Ukraine. There you go. That's explanation. These are cretins from all this expert so-called community in the United States who drink this Kool-Aid, the BS from Ukraine, and they think that they understand the data sets, they understand combat statistics. They don't. None of them does. They have no clue. They do not understand the effectiveness of Russian weapons. They do not understand how real air defense actually affects the combat, because they don't have any reference points. United States didn't win any war, and whatever it, fought in the last, I don't know, 50 years, these were subpar forces. So, there you go. And so they talk about that, yeah, because modern the defensive systems can lock onto them. No, they can't. And as already stated by none other than former chief of the General Staff of Ukraine, for example, PAC-3, 6% effectiveness. Really, the only thing you can hope for is to shoot down high-flying aircraft, and even that is actually sometimes avoidable by Russian pilots. Or you can hit somehow, the geranium, grossly subsonic. Indeed, they fly at around 350 kilometers per hour. So, but yet, here we are. You have these morons from Wall Street Journal and they're experts who are not experts, and the only line of work they are in is to actually spin things in order to make them easier to cope with. Because obviously, United States, as I repeat ad nauseum, lost the arms race by a knockout everywhere across the board, with the only one thing which United States still, well, two, frankly, which maintains either a slight lead or about on par with Russia, it's signal processing, which was traditionally a very strong side for the United States, and the size of the satellite constellation. Their satellite grouping is the largest in the world, and it is pretty significant in terms of the capability, probably the best capability in the world. But it cannot detect Burevestnik, and it cannot, again, Russians themselves are kind of not puzzled. Vladimir Putin correctly stated that we have to actually give it a proper operational and strategic framework, how to use this weapon, because this weapon, and I have news for any US general or British general or French general, let alone those so-called experts from all those Ivy League, technical, facilities, that you cannot shoot down Burevestnik, period, especially when it approaches the way it approaches and the way it maneuvers, and for that matter, they cannot shoot down anything modern on the Russian arsenal, let alone handle the, salvo. And here we come to the point where we have to explain to all those bunch of the morons, pardon my French, and I am absolutely very clear stating that they are morons, essentially. People who do not want to accept the reality, they are morons by definition, delusional, but it's one of the basically manifestations of the being a moron. And we need to take a look at Russia's newest nuclear doctrine, which has been updated last year in 2024. Why it matters? Because before that, it was talking about all those delivery systems and nuclear weapons, which we already know, including hypersonic things like Avangard, which is, nothing is interceptable there. The United States and let alone those poodles from Europe, they have no technology to do anything about it. So, but let's take a look at what we have in terms of a Russian nuclear doctrine. We'll start with the conditions. And here are the conditions, which are, as you can see yourself, it's from the site of the Russian president, Kremlin.ru, and they explain the use. It has been last year. Aggression of any state from a military coalition bloc alliance against the Russian Federation and or its allies shall be considered as aggression of the coalition bloc alliance as a whole. Well, this is one of those things. So let's United States get tomahawks, right? Guess what's going to happen even if they fly from the Ukrainian territory? That's a whole other story. Aggression against the Russian Federation and or its allies by any non-nuclear state with the participation or support of a nuclear state shall be considered as their joint attack. Okay, this is their issue of generally strategic conditions when you have to use nuclear weapons. And here is how it is defined in terms of the reasons or basically criteria for use of it. Russian Federation reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in response to the use of nuclear and or other types of weapons of mass destruction against it and or its allies, as well as in the event of aggression against the Russian Federation and or Republic of Belarus as a member of the Union state with the use of conventional weapons, creating a critical threat to their sovereignty and or territorial integrity. The conditions determining the possibility the use of nuclear by weapons by Russian Federation shall be. And there's a list of those conditions, and some of them you already know, and I actually elaborated on them in depth in a number of other videos, because there was a lot of basically taken from the older, not amended Russian nuclear doctrine. But here is the issue. C, one of the criteria, the enemy's impact on critically important state or military facilities of the Russian Federation, the disabling of which will lead to the disruption of the response actions of nuclear forces. Aggression against the Russian Federation and or Republic of Belarus as member of the Union state with the use of conventional weapons, creating a critical threat to their sovereignty and or territorial integrity. And here it comes. E, receipt of reliable information on the massive launch, take-off, aerospace attack, weapons, strategic and tactical aircraft, cruise missiles, unmanned, hypersonic and other aircraft, and their crossing of the state border of Russian Federation. So, what does it mean? The critical thing about this whole new doctrine is the fact that we have to factor into it what is called in Russia threatening period. It's credible information about not just the launch, but now about preparation of any kind of attack against Russian territory. And guess what? This is where Burevestnik comes in. Many people still do not understand. Burevestnik is a recoverable missile. You literally can call it back, it will fly in, it will land using whatever it uses. Again, make no mistake, it is a highly classified system, but most likely it is the parachute or some kind of the special device which allows it to land or water, splash somewhere. And as a result, when without responding, what is called the respond or head-on response of the nuclear forces with all its might against whatever the threat, what you can do now, and that's what gives you this desirable strategic ambiguity and strategic flexibility, you just launch Burevestnik. And how many, we don't know. And they will fly. And they will fly somewhere around, circling. Nobody would expect them. And of course, only Wall Street Journal experts, quote unquote, bunch of morons, they pretend that somehow you can, based on the data provided by Ukraine, you can stop it. No, you can't. And especially when it approaches from the point of view of, well, in the United States proper, it's a Swiss cheese. It literally has nothing to detect it with. And considering its absolutely unlimited range, it can maneuver there just over the territory of the United States. And when I was speaking about the armed forces of Ukraine losses, and I mentioned those surface-to-air missile complexes, 663 of them have been obliterated, and you can see yourself all kinds of things happening with all those air defense complexes. They cannot hide. The problem is the combined West was so enamored with air power, taking very wrong lessons from World War II and other types of the conflict, including Vietnam, that they forgot that actually it's the system. You have to have a system that means air defense forces on the ground and aviation in the capacity of the air defense force that have to operate like that. United States has nothing like this. The only thing United States has is, oh yeah, let's take off those F-15s, F-16s, and intercept some missile. Well, good luck with that. When you consider that, especially in the case of Burevestnik, you have the indefinite ability to maneuver and just basically get out of the whatever the location you want to attack and then return back. And believe me, if you have which is confirmed, the ability to go supersonic, not very high Mach, but enough to break off the basically range, the distance between the detection, or if you are detected, which you will not be, considering the level of the US air defense radar and signal processors and basically dismal, I mean, pathetic, I mean, humiliating, embarrassing performance by the whatever the United States has the best in its arsenal, which is, of course, Patriot PAC-3. And so when you look at this and when you begin to see what Burevestnik gives you, maybe Russians will have to make a revisions or amend this nuclear doctrine again with adding something which is, as Vladimir Putin correctly stated, what kind of class of weapon is that? Nobody has it. So the only thing they have is a butt hurt. But then again, remember those long-range hypersonic weapon, Dark Eagle? Well, still being tested for many years now. Remember they were claiming that it's going to be in the IRC, Initial Operational Capability, sometime like a few years back. Well, there you go. Nothing happens because, as I state ad nauseum, the basically the arms race have been lost, and it's almost impossible to catch up now, especially with the class of weapons which such as Burevestnik, not to speak of other things, of course, like hypersonic weapons, which Russians are beginning to produce already, the second generation of them. And what can I say? That's the only thing I can explain to you guys, because obviously they will be coping now. They are already coping. As they began to cope after the March 1st, 2018, when Vladimir Putin in his address to Federal Assembly basically explained that here are the new weapons. This is what they are, and they are coming. Now all of them are in. All of them are in IOC or already in the frontline service, and good luck catching this up. Meanwhile, when we talk about all those things, I have to close this with that thingy. Here it is. Let me remind you, remember the Russian communists? Yeah, that's from 1950s. If Russia should win and the communism should win the next world war, many Americans men would be sterilized. Yes, they love this thing, right? The propaganda. It's no different today. So as you know, I am subhuman because I'm Slavic, white person with a Christian background, although I am generally atheist. And so, yeah, there you go. But people in India obviously have a different view, and this is one of those kind of things which are upcoming in bigger numbers anyway. And here we have that India and Russia commit to new aircraft production partnership. And thus South Asian nation needs over 200 jets in the next decade to boost regional connectivity. And HAL, which is the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, with which Soviet Union and Russia have been in cooperation for long decades now, has signed a memorandum of understanding with Russia's United Aircraft Corporation to produce civil commuter SJ-100 aircraft, the companies have announced. And so what is a Sukhoi Superjet, the new one? It's fully Russian, everything Russian in it. It's the Russian engine, Russian APU, Russian avionics, everything, all systems. China, this is for you. You know what, learn from this. And yeah, it's in a serial production. And so what can I say? The model is expected to play a key role in boosting regional air connectivity under the Center UDAN scheme, a HAL statement citing the Indian government regional development initiative. Yeah, Sukhois actually have been pretty successful even in the West. CityJet and Belgian airline and Interjet in Mexico, they were flying them. The problem at that time with them, there was a difficulty to providing full service, maintenance, and that is why eventually they had to go away from the at that time primarily semi-Russian, joint Russian and Western companies jet. Today it's completely Russian. It is absolutely impervious to any kind of the sanctions. And yeah, Indians evidently made the right choice. Now we have obviously this other story with the oil, but I'm not going to elaborate it because we know how it goes with India. But just for those people who still have no clue, even if to imagine that India somehow stops buying all of Russian oil, It's not critical for Russia. And it's difficult to explain without numbers, but I don't have time today to do it. But the point is, yeah, Russian-Indian cooperation continues, and obviously that is a big deal. The 200 new Sukhoi Superjets, which is excellent aircraft, and they're now flying on the Russian PD-8 engines, yeah, that's pretty much what is happening, or what I was talking for years now. So, and this is everything I needed to tell you guys today. And as always, in conclusion, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel at SmoothieX12 on YouTube. And those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee too. And have a nice rest of the week, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.